Hello War of the Visions fans, I'm Jackie Fox, and it's been a while since I've done a Future Visions video, but, well, we just got a content release schedule, like an official one. This never happens. We're already in week 1, so we've gotten Squall, Riona. I've done a video about Riona. Riona, oh my gracious. I've also done a short about how Squall's new barrier works. Now, he wasn't necessarily considered to be the most meta character in JP, and maybe even worse than some of the lackluster reception for Cloud, especially with his 140 update. But Squall is a newer unit and is going to be fairly powerful. Seeds of Fate is also a new lightning card, which is interesting and also a fairly powerful one if you are building for lightning. There seems to be a good future for lightning, so Seeds of Fate might actually be a little bit more worthy of grabbing now that we know that for the third Warrior of the Crystals set, we're going to be getting a Lightning Astrius as our first unit. Kit is looking to be, from the preview, a bit more like the Astrius we know and love, but lightning and updated with a few new tricks in his kit, but also with some punch synergy with a Martialist subjob. So potentially a lot like the Astrius we know and love, but now synergized for a new lightning meta and a character that could probably benefit from Seeds of Fate. So let's talk about, in this, as we are looking into the future, what's coming in the future, and let's start with what's coming next week. That's going to be Irvine. So Irvine is a 90 cost Dark Element Gunner. So kind of like Prompto in a lot of ways, except that he's not a free unit. He is a premium unit. He gets the Hunter subjob, which is going to be really cool for him. I like it when Gunners get a Archer subjob. Guns tend to be a little bit better off as your main weapon, but I really like a lot of the benefits that come from subjobs like this. So looks to be kind of attack focused in terms of what we're getting here. Missile resistance penetration is okay, but not the thing you worry about the most, but it is getting more relevant. AoE resistance always welcome. Looking at resistances, he's going to be good against Slash, Strike, and what's that, Missile as well. So really good against everything but piercing. Dragons tend to resist missile as well, so it looks like most piercing units are probably going to be a good counter for this guy. Neutral to magic, but really good against other physical. Physical does seem to be relatively dominant in a lot of parts of the meta right now, so that's pretty good for him. Let's see, defense penetration 40, always nice to see on an upgraded passive. Range 1, always good for a gunner. Increase agility by 12, excellent, love this. Damage reduction barrier and attack of 24%, that's pretty cool. I also like this. I think the barrier might end up being more impactful than 12% HP. And maybe if you're going really heavy into missile resistance, he does have a little bit of headway. This would bring him up to 35%, which would be good for missile versus missile counters. He has one of the new style upgrades. The range is a little bit unfortunate, and he probably can shoot people in the back with this, unfortunately, but it does counter slash and strike damage. Unfortunately, though, in countering strike damage, it's not going to counter strike damage that's actually happening near him, so that's not nearly as relevant as it seems. And also, a lot of abilities like this have had a 70% proc rate. This only has a 50% proc rate, so it's not nearly as good as a lot of the more recent skills have been. But this has much better range, I would say. Also reduces dark and missile resistance, very nice. In addition to, oh no, it's just the break. It doesn't actually do damage, which should mean that it cannot also being targeted in this way, not shooting through things. This also isn't going to shoot people in the back. Not a big fan of this skill at all, just in general. Don't berserk yourself. A select up to 2 targets range skill is pretty cool. I mean, he can hit a lot of stuff even behind him and around him. Mainly, though, it's going to be in front of him, so the range on this isn't quite as great as it could be for some select target skills, But it is cool to get that as a basic attack, and also for it to be a 2-hit skill. Both pretty neat feathers in his cap for an AP efficient skill, although this isn't as low as a lot of starter skills tend to be. He doesn't have a really low, like 12 AP option. Increase AoE resistance and range. That's a really good buff for him, especially because a lot of units, as I say, often with ranged units, they're going to need AoE to really reach back and hit them a lot of times. Decreasing CT is something I always love to see on a gunner or ranged unit. I especially love to see it getting upgraded to Dispel, Protect, and Shell before dealing damage. It didn't really have to deal with Shell, that's not relevant for Irvine, but it could be relevant for the rest of your party. It could be relevant for Dark Fina, it could be relevant for Roth, etc., who can't deal with things like that, potentially. Maybe Dark Fina can, I don't remember. But it's good that this kind of helps other people on the party. But again, just keeping them back by decreasing their CT is really a good thing for his survivability as a gunner. Attack, agility, and... what's the follow-up damage skill? Okay, so he has a follow-up skill that will cast kind of like a follow-up hit, I guess. I don't know what the range this is referring to. I hope it's fairly big, like Bart's. It could be like a diamond shape around him, like Bart's. It's really going to have to be, unless you have like him and Prompto. That could be a really interesting thing, because this would be a more specifically ranged version of the Bart's combo type idea. So that could make him pretty interesting. He can decrease missile resistance, single target resistance. That gets upgraded also to absorb damage done. This is a really great skill. I love the archer skill. It's just a basic like ranger skill that decreases single target resistance. It is so very good. It always ends up hitting like a Mack truck too, making everything after it hit like a Mack truck. So putting absorb damage on that is really helpful for him. I think that's gonna be a good recovery chance for him. He can inflict sleep and poison with his sub job. He can also decrease healing power with a fire skill, which is interesting, but he's gonna lack a lot. Like when you see off element damage, it can seem interesting, and I'm not really sure what this is for. Although it may be for an anti-ice missile kind of setup. There's a lot of anti-missile stuff in his kit, so this could potentially counter ice missile pretty well. But even with exploiting their weakness to fire, because you don't have fire up modifier in the way that you do probably like dark attack up modifier, this skill probably isn't going to be as strong as you think it will be, even in its ideal situation, and it will underperform everywhere else. But it does give him an AoE option. He doesn't get a lot of those. This is the other one. In addition, kind of to his LB. But we'll get to that in a second. I also want to point out that he doesn't break... Well, hold on. He can break dark resistance with his counter. He can also poison enemies. I'm not sure if sleep factors in, but Prompto, speaking of synergies here, Prompto has a skill that does additional damage if I know Dark Break, I know Poison are both things that do that for him. So potentially you could set up really efficiently some really brutal combos between Irvine and Prompto. Both in terms of Irvine being able to use follow-up damage. So like imagine this, right? Irvine starts out, inflicts poison with this skill, does okay damage. Then Prompto follows that up, chains on that, but also uses, I think it was called Piercer, which is going to do additional mod because of that poison on there. Let's say also maybe they got countered. It could also do additional because of the dark break. It's going to do additional damage because of a dark break anyways, just because it's a dark skill. And then on top of all of that, you can potentially follow up that heavy hitting blast with an additional follow-up skill from Irvine. So these two are going to set up immaculate combos. Also, for the most part, Prompto is a little bit more of a single target unit, so having an upgraded single target resistance break skill here is also helpful in kind of building a synergy between the two of them. But I don't think that you necessarily need Prompto. I just see a lot of ways that Prompto would work really well with Irvine. Moving into Hunter, which I think is going to be a really good skill here, though unfortunately he already has a cross-shape attack and agility buff. This one increases reaction block rate for self. It also doesn't increase the attack for the other characters, which this does. So it also doesn't give him a follow-up skill. So like, while I usually would think that this is, maybe not love, but think that this is a really good buff, it is just flatly inferior to his main job buddy buff. I would not run this, even though it is pretty good. He can berserk people. I don't think that helps Prompto, but he can increase his defense penetration for this cast and missile attack resistance penetration before hitting with a 185 mod. Was that like tracing? Target unit possible, so tracer essentially. Just wow, that's going to be a big heavy hitter when it lands. And he can build up these penetrations as we have seen from other ways in his kit. He can also break in other ways, maybe with his counter, ways that can build up to where this is all he needs to really just ignore any resistances and tear somebody apart. I mean, just with passives alone in combination, even discounting equipment, a Trust Rune passive could get him to 100%. Because you get 40 on passive, 50 here at 10 off of a Trust Rune, 100% defense penetration with this skill. Only with this skill, doesn't last for multiple turns, but this could really take out a tank, potentially. Increasing accuracy and range. That's not bad. Let's look at his other range buff. AoE resistance and range. So this is going to be situational. I think the AoE resistance is more likely beneficial for him, but there are definitely situations where increasing your accuracy by 60 for 3 turns is going to make all the difference in a fight. So I think this depends on who you're going up against, which of those two you run. But one thing I will say about the Hunter sub-job, looking at it, is that it's 2 main buffs. So I do like the skills, and we'll talk about this one in a second. The 2 buffs are either inferior versions or alternate versions of the buffs from the main job, so it doesn't bring a lot in there, and he already has good attacking skills, so it doesn't bring a ton. This skill's cool. This one also has an increased damage if a character is berserked. You have to set that up within this sub-job with this sub-job skills. This isn't, I mean, Berserk's a pretty cool skill, but unless you're setting this guy up for high faith, and I actually see an argument for running him at like 70, 80, maybe even 97 faith, and just hope that he doesn't take damage to lose a little bit of tankiness from that. Just hope he doesn't go up against mages maybe, but running him at a higher faith to try to increase his chance to land a lot of these status moves. But that could work, and also a lot of people have haste these days. People run haste TMRs quite often, so this is often, very often, surprisingly often. I'm going to be 20 AP for a 3-hit skill with a 225 modifier. Again, all good reasons that the Hunter sub-job is probably his best. Viking... defense, attack, defense penetration. This defense penetration lasts for 3 turns, so if you are looking for a buff to work into his rotation instead of substituting something out, this could definitely do it, and this would be a good way to get him to 80 defense penetration with passive. You get another 20 from something like a Peacemaker in terms of equipment, and this can give him defense penetration 100% for 3 turns with proper equipment and passive, so that's pretty cool. Immobilize is useful for gunners, but only when it's on a high range skill. Increasing bravery. This will actually potentially be helpful for bravery farming for himself, outside of that very niche skill. Increased critical chance actually has a decent range, but you're probably not running this. He has no slash attack penetration, so he would need that. It does give him an HP absorb, thankfully, but it's close range, and if anybody is that close to him, he's already dead. So I just think you ignore probably the Viking sub-job entirely. If not, just turn off these 4 skills and maybe use this for the attacking buff. That could be pretty useful, but he has pretty good buffs in his main job, not necessarily needed. Finally, defense penetration, another defense penetration booster here for 30 for 3 turns. So, you know, especially seeing this, knowing that he has this, while it wouldn't with the Peacemaker and his passive, it would only get him to 90%, where this would get him to 100% defense penetration. I think that since this is his limit burst, unless you need multiple fights of Guild War consistency, you really don't want to run this passive, because one of the biggest things that it adds to his kit, this already does. Although this is closer range, so if you want to set up incredibly long range defense penetration combos, he's just not going to have the chance to proc this as early as he could proc this. He's going to have to probably do damage or buff and then get in range to use this. So that's Irvine. But he's also going to be coming out that week with his vision card. So this is going to be spears, bows, guns, and daggers. I'm really tempted to get this card, and I want to say that I love this card a lot for one reason, and this is kind of a long-termer thing. I'm not sure that this is a good card, even for this reason, but it's the first card that I've ever seen that has bows and guns on it. And if I could ever build a team of cards, if I could ever get 6 cards with those 2 jobs on them, that would be one hell of a team, and I would love it. But there are notoriously few bow cards. I mean, building a bow team is practically impossible. That's a thing that I can only really think about in the future. Building a bow hybrid gun team is even further outside of the realm of possibility right now, but it is an exciting thing for the future. This card is limited, so maybe it's worth considering for that if that's something you're looking forward to. But again, kind of rough if you're thinking about that. If you're thinking about the bow aspect of this, I think there is a much better case for people who might be building a gunner sub-job set, but those are, I would say, this card being a limited card, being where it is, what it is, maybe you only pull for this card if you already have 4 or 5 missile cards that are built up, if this kind of completes a set for you. If you're further away from it than that, maybe just skip on this and don't worry about it. But what are we going to be getting with this? It's just not even talking about what the vision card is itself. Well, first of all, there's dexterity and AP on the raw stats on the card. That's going to be helpful, especially for Irvine. As I said, doesn't have a really AP efficient basic attack. Needs some AP reduction in his kit and has it, but dexterity also is going to increase critical or maybe damage, but also definitely accuracy. And then for the group, we're going to be getting acquired AP of 60. This is a really good passive actually to put in a secondary slot, and this is also going to help him with his AP issues himself, and also a lot of other gunners who have AP issues as well, especially since they don't as often have as many buff turns because of their range. Also get 20 critical rate and 50 attack increase. Those are really good, and honestly, this is like something that either bow or gunners are both going to want. I think this is a really, really good card if you have a future planned around one of those 2 archetypes. I just feel like they're both really shaky to build for, especially bow. If you are doing gun, this is definitely one to consider, especially if you're getting Irvine. But I really feel like this constellation of effects that it has for the party is just so amazing. Like, when I was saying that Yuffie's vision card is exactly what the Ninja Blade meta needs, it's all of the things that those units desperately crave. This is kind of the same thing for ranged units in a lot of ways, and I really love it. If you are in that specific niche, you probably want this card. But again, I really hesitate to say if it's worth it for bow. But at the same time, this might be one of those situations where you have to get this for bow, because otherwise it could be another 3 months before you get your 6th card somewhere in the future. But I don't know. Again, it is a really long-term argument to talk about bow and vision card in the same sentence. Next up, we're getting Soul. So let's go back to our screenshot We're going to get the unit released in September in the JP version. So that is first, on the second week of October, going to be Soul and his Vision card. So let's talk about that. Now, this was the big bad of the first season of FFB, or the final big bad. I mean, in a lot of ways, like Citra and, Citra really was the big bad of a lot of season 1 of FFB, but Soul was also kind of like the final boss in a lot of ways, or the pre-final boss. Anyways, he ends up having a really interesting relationship with Rain after being defeated by him, a reverent and almost worshipful relationship even. This guy is going to have some single target resistance, some strike resistance as well, and critical evasion on just this base stuff. Okay. He's getting magic from pretty much everywhere. This is more, if you remember what I said about Renoa, this is more what I expect from the resistances of a modern unit. We got 25 resistance to strike, that's most important. And it's really important for his specific niche, but also 20% slash resistance, which is just important in general, and also 10% magic resistance. So, he has largely positive resistances to the two most important damage types, but also to the one that is most important to him. So, just great. I love his resistances here. Very good. Resistance to slow and stop also is pretty nice, but nothing to like silence or other stuff that mages would want. So, he is shut downable, but he is not time mageable. Upgraded passive is going to give us 24% magic, spirit penetration of 40, magic attack, resistance penetration of 30. So full suite of resistance penetrations, including the magic upgrade. Almost everything you want to be like a modern tier DPS passive. We would want one more thing, just one added bonus in addition to that. And for a mage, healing power 15 is pretty cool. So this is just a really great passive for him. Love it. I'm also thinking probably his other passive, decreased chance of being targeted, single target resistance of 12, and chance to float, especially if he is going to have some healing skills and going to have a healing modifier up. It might be cool to put negative hate on him until he finally has to start doing damage himself. And if you want, you can also use his Rune Knight passive to increase the spirit penetration just off of his passives alone to 80%, and also give him a good 20% accuracy, which can be helpful for him. He has a 70% counter. This is what I was just talking about with Irvine. These are usually 70% counters recently, not 50%. And this is also going to be to slash and strike damage. I think just like Irvine, except also unlike Irvine, this does not have the stupid range of his skill. So this is just a really good counter, and the other counters don't matter. This is the counter you use. But also we're seeing another way to reduce strike damage here. And one that, well, yeah, counter blocking can fix that. Non-elemental 100% hit chance skill. This is basically an unelemental, unevadable pain. That's a weird way to say that. It does have a pretty short range though, which is kind of unfortunate, but okay. I mean, it's okay. I'm not mad at it. Okay, thank you again to KT7up for making awesome guides on how a lot of these new barrier and damage reduction mechanics work. This is going to decrease his damage from AoE skills depending on the size of the AoE skill. So the bigger the area, the less damage it will do to Soul after applying this buff, but let's look at what the rest of the buff does. Increases magic by 40%. Increase critical evasion by 50. for 3 turns. So that's going to make it a lot harder to hit him with a crit, and he's going to hit a lot harder himself. And then on top of that, AoE damage reduction. So we've got offensive and defensive here. It's a good kind of roll compression and a buff. It's an offensive and defensive buff. In addition to that, though, we have a 7,500 HP barrier, always excellent. Protect of 25%, which is also granted to allies within this cross-shape pattern. So this is going to be his buddy buff. His buddy buff is also going to give, I don't think these two stack, right? So it's going to give 15%. If these do stack, that would actually be pretty cool, but neither here nor there. 15% strike resistance to allies, but if those are fire allies, I believe it is either 35% or an additional 35%, make a total 50% strike resistance for 3 turns. So Soul has the ability to turn fire teams into anti-strike teams pretty effectively. Now, luckily, the most dangerous of the of the strike units at this moment are lightning, which is a neutral element for Soul here. But unfortunately, Perrine is also probably like the close second, or maybe even third, in terms of most dangerous strike units at the moment. So she might kind of deal with him in a different way, but he's definitely going to have good resistances and be able to pass those resistances around the party. Because if you're keeping track at this point, because he's always going to be a fire ally, he for himself, he is always going to get the 35 or maybe even 50. In combination with other things, this is going to give him the ability to, perhaps with proper equipment, get up to 100% strike resistance for himself. And maybe there aren't other characters I think that you could party with him that really have the same base resistances, but he could definitely build up fire teams' resistances quite high. Still, it is notable that Alaya the Alabaster has strike resistance penetration and also strike resistance breaking, so she has some kit to deal with this. It will kind of put, it will make another hurdle that she has to overcome. It will kind of force her into using those skills instead of perhaps her better ones. It will cause her to play suboptimally, but she does have ways to counter this, even if it's not kind of ideal play. But even if she does have ways to counter this, this doesn't mean this isn't effective against her. It just means it isn't as effective as it could be. It can't just brick wall her necessarily. Next skill, we've got an AoE, cross-shape AoE, 50% chance to inflict poison for 3 turns. And that also increases with 75% chance if they have AP, Restore, Haste, or Berserk. So, holy crap, if Haste itself wasn't common enough as a thing that you could easily punish, AP Restore is also pretty common. Putting both of those on here, on what's already a 50% modifier, wow. That's pretty crazy. It doesn't say why it increases the modifier by 75% or in what conditions, but so I can't really speak to that. But 160 mod's okay, and that would get really good with an additional 75. Maybe it's increased modifier if the poison lands, and it's looking fairly likely in a lot of cases that poison would land, especially since it's a mage. So we're running high faith, we're running 97 faith, especially against other mages. This is going to be disastrous. Then we have a select up to 2 target skill. If you saw my Renoa video, or if you read the comments of that video, I went into a lot of detail about why select 2 target skills or select 3 target skills in Alaya's case, really game breaking even, are just really, really good and are kind of the next generation standard of what you want. And this one gets upgraded, so this is going to be quite good. With the upgraded skill, we're going to break magic barriers before dealing damage. We're going to hit with a 180 mod up to 2 targets. Quite a big diamond pattern for this one, even bigger than the next skill we're going to talk about. Also, it's a 2-hit, which is interesting. Automatically cast another attack skill for self and decrease AP by 15 for the target. The skill being cast, Right. Okay. So the skill being cast is going to restore AP for, restore HP for an ally. Restore HP. It does say for self, but it also says for ally, and it has a range. So I guess it's going to allow him to additionally cast us a heal on this. So it's going to break their AP, it's going to remove a magic barrier before dealing damage, it's going to do damage and select multiple targets, but in addition to all of that, he's also going to get a heal off of it. So this is kind of like a more limited version of something we saw with Ferris, with the sequence attacks that would be able to heal a large area around her. This is going to be a single target, so like if that was kind of getting an additional Curaga, this is more like getting an additional Curada, but it's also going to benefit that additional healing power. And frankly, I'm glad I'm finally seeing healing. I was thinking that healing power up was going to go to waste. And then we have another select 2 target skill. This guy gets 2 of them offensively. They dispel courage before dealing damage. And with a 165 mod, they might actually take some people out. It's not huge, but it is kind of a decent hit. It's also going to restore HP for self, increasing the effect by 120 for each enemy kill up to 2. So as you can see here, a 120 mod is would be what you would get for 1 KO. That's going to be equal to the ally heal on the other. But you could also double that to 240, which is going to be, I think, even stronger than Curada at this point. So this is going to be more like a cure, and this is going to be more like a maybe even stronger than a Curada if you can get both of them. And you know what, while we're down here, let's talk about the limit burst, because boy, that's a wall of text. Dispel shell for targets, dispel courage for targets. So another way of dealing with courage is going to be a diamond AoE for 69 AP. Nice. 200 mod, non-elemental. So this kind of reminds me in that respect of Renoa's limit break. But it's also going to have a 67% chance to inflict poison, even higher than the previous skill that we talked about, inflicting poison here. But also, a lot of these extra bonuses, if you do poison them with the other skill and then use this as a follow-up, you're automatically going to get all these bonuses anyways. So that other skill can be a way of guaranteeing that the LB goes real hard on somebody. That's going to decrease attack by 40%. It is going to decrease healing power by 50 and decrease fire resistance by 25%. If all, unfortunately, after doing damage and after having the chance to inflict poison, which happens after damage. Of course, like the fire resistance debuff wouldn't really matter happening before, since this is a non-elemental attack. So this will help follow up. So you're really marking them for death. They're not going to be able to heal. They're going to be taking additional damage from your allies, and you've gotten rid of their shell and their courage. So if they're surviving, they're hanging on by a thread at this point. This is absolute dystopia for an attack. I love it. And then Soul also is getting a vision card, more single target resistance on the unit effects. But we're looking at, is that Warrior Devout? Warrior Greatsword Devout. Okay, interesting spread. Elemental Chain Resistance 36. Every card that Rain gets put on gets elemental resistance. Not every card, but like recently. Increase Human Killer 20 when attacking with magic attacks. Very, very cool. And Agility 15. Agility cards are always great if you're running one of these sets, one of these teams, or you want to maybe be able to splash Soul onto one of these teams. This is a really good card. It's bringing in decent resistance as a decent resistance factor. Not necessarily my favorite, and when I'm going for more defensive stuff on a vision card and more aiming for single target resistance or AoE resistance and something like this, but it is not entirely unwelcome. But the Human Killer and the Agility, those are both top tier. So if you are doing a team with some of this stuff, consider it. This does look like a pretty good good card in terms of offense. It could have gone all offensive, and maybe it is good that there is some sort of a resistance here. Unfortunately, it was in the big slot, but whatever. It's not a bad card, and, you know, at this point, and like most job-based cards, it's kind of, do you play one of these things? And if you do, maybe you want this, but I'm not nearly as excited about this card in some ways as I am Irvine's card, even though I think the people who do find a home for this are really going to like it. Although, I will say, there's not a lot of, like, magic. Actually, hold on. Let me back up. Hold on. You know what? I just thought about this. On second thought, there's like one job class outside of the mage stuff. Two. Sorry. Forgot about rain. Wait, that's not rain. Shit. Forgot about rain. Finally, rain is actually on. Since he got skipped on his dad's card. But yeah, there aren't many magic users on this, so this is gonna be kind of lost on most of the units that would equip this, unless you're doing like a devout team, and that's not necessarily where you're going for DPS. I mean, if it's hard to dislike an agility card, because honestly, you could run this card for agility and nothing else. But I'm having a real hard time liking it, honestly. All right, so after that, let's go back to our screenshot. Getting a Halloween unit. Now, I wanna just before we move on, we don't know what the Halloween unit is. Okay. But before we move on, I do just want to say there is a little bit of outstanding lore that could be wrapped up by this Halloween. And that is from Nightmare Before Halloween. And I say that because there is a character that is mentioned really, really heavily in here. Last year's monsters were driven off into the dawn, but this year will be different, because this year, the Underqueen herself shall lead them. Isn't that so, Lucia, Crace? Those exorcists will never stand a chance against Underqueen Celir. Are we sure about that? I mean, they seem so very powerful, and terrifyingly muscular too. In a certain season, strange and wicked demons appear, parading through the streets at night, sowing mischief and mayhem as they please, and in response, the exorcists rush to the scene to terrify the demons and drive them away. But this year, the famous Underqueen has decided to join the fun, promising to make this Halloween the spookiest one yet. So there are two new names in here. We've already gotten Halloween Lucia, but I did want to point out that, unfortunately, Halloween Crace, in addition to being a minion here, is kind of dressed identically to Halloween Lucia. So I have zero excitement for actually pulling that unit, as it is a carbon copy of Lucia, at least in costume. I mean, Halloween Crace, but don't give me another minion if I've already got one. You know what I mean? I've got enough minions. Celir here, though, that Underqueen Celir with her scythe, yes, let's fucking go. Let's fucking do this. Let me get Scythe Celir. Let's fucking go. So that's what I'm hoping for Halloween, but who knows? What we do know is coming, though, is going to be Gernsback. So Gernsback is going to be another 70 cost unit, but another, like, very powerful 70 cost unit. Like, these 70 cost units have kind of felt more like 90 cost units. The 90 cost units that we've gotten recently have felt more like 100 cost units. Like, looking at you, Renoa and Irvine, looking a little bit better than usual. But the 70 cost units are definitely like 85 costs, at least in terms of their power. So, quite good and easy to pull, too. But also, I think for a lot of people, probably easy to skip, because they're not the absolute pinnacle tippy-top tier of, you know, you can get them when you get them. You can afford to slow build them. It's not bad. But on the other hand, I've been wanting this dude because of this armor for so long. I'm so happy to finally get access to Gernsback. Just such a cool design. And also, he's going to be coming with 4 jump. Usually I don't have much to say on the screen about a character, but 4 jump is a lot. He is a jumpy boy. Good offensive spread here. A little bit of reaction block rate, acquired AP. I'm not super excited about much of that. Stats aren't necessarily incredible, but he is very resistant to magic, which is nice. He is oddly enough weak to missile, which is usually kind of the opposite case for a lot of these units, but he has resistance to striking, which is rare, interesting, not super helpful, and that's only 10%, and at least positive against slash, so that's good. Neutral to other piercing units. Okay. He is very resistant to poison, and berserk, and I think those are 2 things that Soul does particularly well. So this character could actually deal with Soul. I don't think Soul actually dealt with piercing all that well either, so maybe this was kind of meant to be a little bit of a counter. I'm not saying that this guy's going to take Soul himself, but he has some advantages that help him with that, I'm sure. So for a 70 cost unit, this is a great passive, because I mean, all you would really need is some pierce attack resistance penetration in here, and you would have a premium passive for a 100 cost unit. This is great for 70. And I think kind of in keeping with like Comral and Grifford and how well their passives have worked out. But 24 attack, 40 defense penetration, and 12 single target resistance is nice. I mean, he's heavily armed. He should have some resistance. Increased range is probably a skip, but not necessarily. Yeah, it looks like that's only going to apply to stuff in Sniper, so when they're hyper-specific like that, that's usually not good. But we can, through the main job, get agility, always very nice, and we can buff that strike resistance up another 15. Sounds good. Although you might also go with the attack accuracy and evasion resistance down. Definitely gonna skip on that. So the sniper stuff just isn't good for him. Man, his counters just suck. I'm not really sure what to do with that. Nice. Basic attack is an HP absorber, which is pretty cool. It's gonna make him quite durable, but also it has a casting time, so I guess that means he's really got to wind up his throw. You don't see that often with piercing units, but especially like at that close of range, it's really odd that there's an activation time here. Whatever. You know what? Maybe it's a jump skill. He's got 4. It's drain jump. It's a jump skill. Oh, drain jump. Actually, this was my favorite skill by far from Crisis Core. So happy to see it represented here. 40% attack, 20 defense, and protect. Excellent. This is a pretty good buff. Keeps him safe, gives him extra attack to drain more HP. Cool. Also, this will mean that he's in the air before this lands, so this is also a window of invulnerability for him, which also removes him from the board. It means that if he's kind of tanking in any way, someone else is getting hit, but I don't think that's a huge drawback for him. He has an instant skill. It feels weird talking this way about a physical unit, but he has an instant AoE skill, decreases AoE resistance for 20 just for this cast, unfortunately, and then it's going to hit with a 165 mod across that AoE, and also land a full dispel afterwards. Unfortunately not before, but afterwards. And then we have a decreased pierce resistance skill that's going to do that before dealing damage. Good. 30% reduction. Nice. 185 mod is going to hit pretty hard. It's another jump. Dragon Lance Dive. So this is also going to represent basically a window of invulnerability, jump invulnerability. And then, let's see. So his buddy buff is going to restore 20 AP for himself, 25 single target resistance for 3 turns for himself. It's pretty good. The only part that actually lands on allies, though, which is a little bit weird, but the only part that lands on allies is going to be the ability to add to them the ability to reduce pierce resistance by 15 on their hits. So they dual damage, and I think then the pierce resistance thing happens, which means that he's essentially enlisted the rest of his team as pierce debuffers for himself, which is pretty cool. Except that he already has a decreased pierce resistance skill, but I guess they stack. I don't know. But that gets upgraded to also include a 3 times physical barrier of 50% for himself. So it's still pretty selfish in this version. Again, this is the only part that's going to allies. Everything else is just going to Gernsback, but not bad. And again, this, I mean, if your other allies are Pierce, and there are good water Pierce units, it's not that they're super relevant, but they exist. This could be benefiting them, but it seems like kind of all of this buff. This is a very selfish buddy buff in a very weird way. But we have a plus 30% hit chance, piercing skill. So this is going to be a spear throw from the looks of it. Yes, Dragonhorn piercing spear. So he's going to be throwing it from the center of this, and it's going to be cutting through anything it needs to get to its target. So it could hit multiple, but probably won't. 200% mod, 30% hit chance, decrease healing power 50. I'm not sure that he's going to be accurate enough to really make that as impactful as a guaranteed hit in a lot of cases. So, sub job, I like. This is probably his biggest AoE, but it's also one of the most awkward. But it does have a chance to stun, which ain't bad. He can get himself up to 4 movement and increase his agility, but like, he's already a very selfish buffer. I mean, technically he has a buddy buff, which is good for AI reasons, but he doesn't necessarily need another selfish buff. But I mean, because it's like, do you want him to be faster and more able to move, or do you want him to be tougher and stronger? No. So, but it's 2 different play styles. I could see you switching between the 2 of these. I don't like these for only having 2 skills. Although I don't think Sniper is going to really make me very happy either. Although it does give us an option to increase his defense penetration by another 40. So, you know, that's not the worst. It's another selfish buff. It's another one of these cases of like, do I use this or the one that makes him faster? But I guess for this one, this is the one that you might swap for that. Agility decreaser, a disabler, interesting, but let's see, attack and Esper killer, not necessarily relevant, probably something you turn off in most cases, except for actual Esper fights. Oh, paralyzing shot, not great. And a move decreaser, still not super excited. It does have a decent mod, but probably not something he's going to use terribly well. Another way to go for alternate damage types would be Nightblade. Pierce and missile resistance is good because he doesn't have either of these resistances. This is also a buddy buff that actually buffs your buddies. I don't really like it though, but it is what it is. Stun Blade, Maiming Slash, ability to absorb AP, Spinning Slash. It's kind of standard Nightblade fare. It's damage, really, for the most part. And then for the Limit Burst, we are going to break physical barrier for target, decrease single target resistance for 3 turns by 30. Quite a big amount. This is going to be really impactful. I think this is great. This is excellent. And then 200% mod. This is going to be a single target attack, unfortunately. 43 AP at least is more cost efficient than some of the mages we've been seeing recently, or even Irvine. But that's gonna hit like a Mack truck. I'm a little bit sad at single target, but hey, not a terrible unit, but not as excited for him as I could be. I do think his main job has a lot of potential, but he really loses me in the sub jobs quite a bit. And then for his vision card, here it is. This is the Ultros week. It's a Halloween vision card, and my bad. Okay, so false alarm. Ultros is going to benefit Red Mage, so another Red Mage card. Cool. Lances and Devout. Big stat here for the party is magic resistance 24, critical damage 20, neat, and pierce attack 35. Personally, I mean, if you're looking at this as a lance card, and I think that you kind of have to, pierce attack 35 is a big part of what this card does. As a red mage player, they actually finally did it. They finally did it. Despite how much I love Ultros in Final Fantasy lore, I don't want this card. But as a maybe as a Pierce player, you would really appreciate the Pierce attack up, because the stuff on the card is not bad. Attack and critical rate on the individual buff, not bad. It's not a terrible card if you can make use of the Pierce attack. If you can't, I don't think you really want this. But another reason you might want this is for the Esper. So, kind of middling in attack and magic, unfortunately. Not a huge agility. I'm not super excited about this guy right at the moment. Let's see what we can make happen. We can get defense penetration off of him, which is cool. This is another way to get defense penetration. There's some single target resistance. General attack is always pretty good. So this is pretty general. You could build this as a Pierce Esper. And arguably, if you're going for the card, you probably are. But this is a more general build for it. Crit rate 7, crit damage 9, accuracy 7, crit evade 15, defense penetration 20, single target resistance 5, poison resistance 25, attack 20. Still only a agility of 17. I'm just having a hard time getting excited about this guy, unfortunately. So there we are. Those are the units that we know that are coming in October. So that is your full October forecast, as good as I could do. I have absolutely no idea what the vision card of the Halloween collaboration is going to be, and I have other than guessing that we are getting Under Queen Selir, I have no idea who the Halloween unit's going to be either. So good luck with all that. Have fun, be safe, and that was our future vision. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. It means so much to me. And, you know, if you enjoyed this, if this helped you, like and subscribe, leave a comment, do anything you can to help the channel out. It's tough here on YouTube. It really is. Especially since, like, I don't social media or anything, so y'all gotta be my hype crew for me. I don't hype myself like that. I'm sorry. Otherwise, it'd probably be a bigger channel, but it is what it is. And also, just while I got you here, be sure to check out that link in the description, or you're going to be seeing it on screen now, probably. That's going to lead you to the rest of the Jackie Fox Media Empire. That book over there, that's actually the hardcover copy. I'm working on getting that registered. The hardcover, it's going through some proofing issues, but I'm trying to get that ready for everybody. But the paperback of It Even Happens While We Sleep is available. The link to that will be in that link in the description. It's on Amazon. You can get it for yourself, prime it to yourself super fast, I guess. But that's how I make money. I sell books, I write books, I'm a writer. So be sure to support that work and support this channel, and I'll support you by seeing you in the next one.